You guys are going to be so excited for this conversation. I have Allison Taylor here with me today. She's the host of the Everybody's Gotta Eat podcast, where she gives tips, tricks, and help in the kitchen to help busy moms get dinner on the table. Yes, please. She is passionate about meal planning and making feeding your family simple. So, y'all are welcome. This is going to be great. Allison, so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think this is such an important conversation because eudaemonia is all about human flourishing, and food is such a big driver for that in so many ways. But the stress that can come along with it just it's all multi-layered. So I'm curious to hear from you about your relationship with food and how you see it playing into your well-being.
Absolutely. So, food is everything, and it's one of those basics that we need to survive, kind of like sleep. But just like sleep, where we've turned it into it's it's science. It's how can we make it better? How can we make it work for us? And a lot of times I think about my podcast and what it means, and I'll sit there and be like, food is so basic. We need it to survive, but we turn it into this powerful thing. And that can either be to our benefit or to our demise. And it is multi-layered. And we have to take ownership of ourselves. But then as parents, we have to help facilitate our own kids' relationship with food. And it's a lot and it can be stressful.
So I'm
So
curious.
yeah.
Sorry. You're making me wonder what your relationship with food was like growing up.
Yeah, so I am a product of the 90s where food was super processed, and I feel like the goal was to make it as quick and processed as possible. Um, and so, we'd have all sorts of packaged food in the house, and that was just our normal. Um, I would say my relationship to food was pretty typical until I got a little bit older. And I looked down and I realized I had a belly. And I can't remember how old I was, but I looked down and I was like, what is happening? Why do I have this? And I remember talking to my mom about it. And she was like, well, some kids just have baby fat longer than others. And she was super gentle, super sweet. But that's a very like core memory for me because after that, I realized what I ate made a difference in how I looked. And it was never a super unhealthy relationship to food, but there was a time in my life where food was kind of the enemy. And I didn't do the proper research to see like what I could be doing. And I also come from a family that is pretty picky when it comes to what they like to eat, and I'm not at all. I like almost everything. And so it was hard for me to expand my horizons, so to speak, until I would go to my best friend's house who like they just ate super healthy, super a broad variety of food, and I got to experience that. And that I think my best friend's family is what opened my eyes to what's possible and what food can do for you.
So cool. So
Yeah.
how old were you then?
So I have been best friends since fifth grade.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I was like 11, and then yeah, we're still best friends. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, you've touched on so many pieces here. And tell us a little bit about your family because I know you're not just like dealing with cooking for yourself at this point, right?
Right. Yeah. So cooking for my family is a source of joy, a source of stress. It's multi-layered, right? Just
Yeah.
just like food in general is multi-layered. When I got married, I fully embraced wanting to experiment in the kitchen, and I I really found joy in finding recipes that we liked and were healthy and how I could incorporate healthy eating into our routine. And having kids just enhanced that even more. But then having kids also made you realize like these little these little tiny human beings have their own opinions, and each day can be different, and it can really turn into a battle if you allow it, and it can really turn into a source of like major frustration when you're trying to feed your kids.
So now that you have found all of that to be, you have found joyful moments in all of that. Did it start from this place of like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, I want to turn it around? Or did you go into it really conscious about wanting to bring the joy of food and cooking into your family?
I think the joy for me is pretty personal. I know that my family knows that I enjoy cooking and I enjoy making different things and trying new things out in the kitchen. But for them, they just want to know that it's going to taste good
Yeah.
and that they're not, this sounds silly, but that they're not going to be afraid to try it. So there is a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety for kids when it comes to food and mealtime. And I think as parents, it's it's our duty to facilitate a healthy relationship with food, but also helping take away that anxiety. And it's such a balance, and it's day by day. I feel like it's such a daily thing. Um, but it all starts with conversations. And it's never too early to talk to your kids about why we eat in the first place and what it's actually doing for them. And I remember just recently talking to she was 6 at the time, she's 7 now, but she was like, I don't want to eat this. I'm not hungry. And I've had this conversation repeatedly, but I was like, well, let's look at what's in your bowl or what's in your plate. And I would say, well, this is important because it's going to give you the energy to get through your school day. Or this is important because you just had Taekwondo and you need to replenish your muscles with what they need to keep growing. And then also, like, you know how you were feeling grumpy earlier? Well, if you eat this, that's going to help you not feel grumpy. Um,
So good. It's teaching. What I love that you're highlighting is teaching, and you already said this, but teaching kids about the power of food and what food is doing in their bodies. Because I know you have girls, and especially like boys have eating disorders, disordered eating thinking too. But
yes.
I think that when we think about food as just a means to gain weight or lose weight, manage a certain body shape, we lose like 99% of the value of food. And right from the very beginning, your kids are going to understand like it has a much bigger role than that.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think with anything as parents, you want to facilitate autonomy, right? Because we're not always going to be around to help them make decisions. And so what's always in the forefront of my mind is listening to their own body, remembering what a certain food is going to do. And I have to do this too. The days that I go to the gym, I've tried to be consistent with going to the gym. And then I'm like, well, it's not going to make a difference if I'm not intentionally trying to eat more protein or intentionally trying to eat more in general, because I need to eat more if I'm working out consistently. And so sometimes you don't want to eat. Even adults, we don't want to eat, but we know it's for the best if we do. And that's what I want to instill in my kids is there are so many things in life that maybe we don't want to do. And that for food as well. But let's think about like a longer term effect of making these healthy decisions.
Yeah, and you gave that great example of like if you were grumpy this morning, like let's kind of look at that, right? Talking about blood sugar levels and helping your kids recognize like when your energy gets low, there are certain foods you can eat to improve your energy for hours, and then there's foods you can eat that will improve your energy right away, and then you're going to
Yes.
feel even grumpier in like an
Yes.
hour, right?
Yes.
Yes. And then tomorrow you might wake up with the sniffles, and here we go down
Yeah,
that rabbit trail.
for sure.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important too on that note is I kind of honed in on like the sugar and what sugar can do to you. And I kind of like took a step back from it because I don't want any certain food to become the enemy or become this like bad thing. I don't want to put labels on food.
Yeah.
I I don't I don't know if that's right or wrong. It's just food is food, and we can make healthy decisions, healthier decisions. We can want to have a treat and know that maybe it's not the best decision, but it's okay. And we do that. We have to be gentle, right? So there are days where we just need a break. And maybe it's not for the best for our career or our mental health. Well, no, edit this part out. Um, I lost my train of thought.
Well, you're talking about not wanting to demonize food. I think you can go back to
Yeah,
that place of like
yeah,
food's not good or bad if you want to continue with that thought.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, food isn't good or bad. It's just food. And I think we just really have to remember food is just what we need. It's just another basic need to survive.
I would totally agree with you on that. To me the way I interpret that is like food is more than calories though, right? So like some food is high in nutrition and some food is kind of anti-nutritious. Like it actually does like deplete our body of good stuff.
Yes.
So this is something I struggle with personally too, because I don't like to label food good or bad. And when I first started health coaching like 12 years ago, I definitely labeled food as good or bad. Now I
Hmm.
just think like my thinking has evolved because I've seen how much that's been like steeped in diet culture, this right
Yes,
or wrong, right? And some food is really helping us and some food is really hurting us. And I think it's really, we can be empowered in our decision making, just kind of understanding the dynamic. It's not like 100, we don't have to get rigid and restrictive, right? You agree
absolutely.
with that? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's also important to remember that just because it's on the shelf at the grocery store does not qualify it to be food. And that's kind of like the flip side of it is we know we have access to things that are labeled food or consumable, but we also have to understand it's our job to make sure what we're feeding our children or what we're eating ourselves is actually, if there's anything in it that's actually helpful at all to our bodies. Because there are things that we can buy on the market that we know are not good, proven to be not good, but they're still available to purchase. The same thing goes with food. And so we just have to just be aware of those things.
I think that is I mean, that's a huge point. And when you start looking at like what food is, as we've been taught, you go around the periphery of the grocery store and those items actually don't have ingredient labels,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
There's not a
Yeah,
label. If it doesn't have a label, more than likely it's a good thing to be eating. But
yeah,
then once we move into the middle and there's labels and words in the ingredients that we don't even recognize, they're not even like food words, they're like chemicals and we're calling that food, it gets to be a whole different thing, right? I mean, I was trained like try to look for food labels with under 5 ingredients.
yeah,
And ideally sugar is not one of those first 5.
yeah.
It's hard to find ingredient label with fewer than 5
It
ingredients.
really is. And
Yeah.
it's hard as a parent to not want to go to those things because they're easy, they're quick. The kids can get those things themselves. They don't need help. And it's so true. I think we have to come from a place of curiosity, not of fear. Because there was a time where I was scrolling through social media and I saw this article, and then I was like so far deep in these chemicals that are in our food that I'm like, I feel like the only solution is to like move out of the city, like move off the grid and just like raise and grow our own food. And like obviously that's like too extreme, like we can't do that. But you just have to make, I think for me, it's making small changes, small enough changes that aren't going to impact our livelihood or my ability to sustain those choices or those changes. If I start small, you can build on that. And I think it's also important to do your research. So just because someone says something on social media or you read something, try to find a few more articles and see what they're really saying and see if you can change like the brand or make that an organic choice instead of generic brand or whatever. And yeah, it's a lot. And then it can turn into fear, and we can never act in a place of fear. It's not sustainable.
Great. So, coming from a place of curiosity and like people are listening, like, okay, there's hope for me. I've been really stressed out. I don't know what to feed my kids. This lady is saying I can do it without stress and overwhelm. Like, what does that look like? You have two young kids, yes?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Yes, I have an almost 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 2-year-old.
Three, yes.
Yes, yes. So I think it is just those small changes. So if your family, for example, is struggling to eat enough vegetables, I think you just hone in on the vegetables that your children like and you increase that. And you make sure that you're feeding them a vegetable that they like with every meal or every dinner. And then it's just small and starting slow. So, a big thing for kids is having that ownership and feeling like they are contributing. So, if you physically go to the grocery store, you can have them pick something out that they want to try. And they're going to want to try it because they chose it. And then if you don't do your grocery shopping, you can ask them, "Hey, what vegetable should we try tonight?" And just see what they say. And I'm not ever going to lie to my children, but I will add in certain ingredients. And for the most part, if I start small, they don't notice. And that's why I make a lot of one pot meals because then everything's incorporated and it's the stuff that they like. And, a lot of the times there's cheese involved. And then I'm like huge on incorporating spinach in everything I make. And if you chop it up small enough, it just looks like an herb. It doesn't even look like a vegetable. And I did this quite a few years ago. I started small, just a small amount of spinach. They noticed at first, and then I just kept doing it. And they realized that it doesn't change the taste of the food that they like. And so now I'm just like doing that all the time. And so I think just making a small change, letting your kids acclimate to that change before you do anything else or anything drastic is super important.
I love it. And you're bringing that piece of like you're starting them early with the feeling autonomous, which I think is the best way to raise kids from the beginning. I was a Montessori teacher and they say like teach me to help myself, right? It's the whole theme behind it. And
Yeah.
um the whole philosophy is to help them feel like they're doing it on their own. And that is a game changer with everything parenting starting from the very beginning.
Yes,
I love that you're
definitely.
highlighting that. Yeah. So on your podcast, I love your podcast. Tell us a little bit about how, what you're sharing and what people will gain when they listen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have felt a calling to encourage other moms for a long time. And I realized for me, that is meal planning and cooking because I have seen so many of my friends really struggle with it and really get defeated and overwhelmed by the whole feeding your family. And of course, I go through that too, but I really feel like it's what I'm supposed to be doing is just encouraging other moms to that it's okay that we're in this together and we've got this. And so my podcast is really about sharing meal planning. I just lay out meal ideas for people to get inspiration, and I share recipes and my thoughts on food and food stories. And because food is such this like ultimate connector, we use it to do essentially everything. We have food as a part of it. And so I was like, why not come together and encourage each other and also form that connection to know like you're not the only mom struggling, because it's really hard when you're seeing all these food blogs and all these moms cooking and all these like perfect meals. It's really hard to just kind of want to give up on the whole cooking journey. And so I just want to just bring realness to it.
I love that. Tell me what meal planning looks like for you. How often do you do it? Where do you start?
So I most often do it weekly, and I break it up into just like manageable time frames. And so I just start by really thinking of the meals that I'm going to make the following week. And I just take, 5 to 10 minutes to think of those meals. And I use Pinterest a lot for that. I have a food board with different sections of different cuisines or types of meals. And then it really helps me not have to, it doesn't take as much mental energy to
Just scroll.
arrive to those meal ideas, that weekly menu. And then that's all I'll do. And then, I'll take some more time, that if I have an extra few minutes, and I start writing the actual ingredients that I would need from the grocery store for those meals. And then I always have like a running list of other things that we need in the house. So like household items or other food, like fruit, vegetables, that kind of thing, like snack food. And so I'll just add it to that list. And I do a lot of grocery pickup. So I don't go in the store a whole bunch unless I know I just need a few things because of my 2-year-old. Yeah, it's just a huge time saver. And then he's not trying to pick out all of the other foods.
Yeah.
So it saves money and it saves a lot of time. But so I will, you know, a lot of the grocery apps have your most purchased items or your list, and then you can choose like what do you need from your list, which makes it really easy. And so yeah, I'll just make the actually order the groceries, put them in my cart, my virtual cart, and order them and then go pick them up. So I never put that much pressure on myself to get it all done in, one sit down, because that's a lot. And I have 3 kids that are needing things, and I just don't want to feel like overwhelmed by food.
Yeah, your system sounds a lot like mine, which is like kind of getting a running list going and then actually looking for specific menu items that you can add specific ingredients to and kind of letting it sit around and percolate for a few days while other things sift through and you'd realize what else you might need and people make their requests and stuff, right?
Yep, exactly.
That's good. What do you think is the biggest time saving tip? You gave one with which is the online ordering, but maybe that's your answer. What is your biggest time saving tip for getting healthy meals on the table?
I would say, well, for me, I kind of alter recipes. So I've like created my own recipes over the years, and that's what I'm sharing on my podcast. But it's just looking at a recipe and seeing like what can I do to knock out a few minutes, or what can I prep ahead of time so that it really only takes 15 minutes to get dinner on the table. And I'm not a huge meal prepper. Like I'm not a Sunday all day prepping meals for the week. What I will do is I will in the morning see what I'm making for dinner that night and see like, okay, can I cut up the chicken? Can I cut up these vegetables beforehand when I have a few minutes. And then it's less overwhelming at the end of the day when kids are getting home from activities and people are tired and hungry and you are almost checked out of your day. You've almost clocked out and you just want to get it done. That's huge for me. So just it takes time if you're not used to it to kind of get in that mindset, but having a plan is everything. And it takes so much stress off. And if you're feeling stressed about the idea of making a plan and you don't want to do that, I just encourage you to start somewhere. So even if it's just knowing what you're going to make for dinner for the next 3 days or the next 4 days, just start there and see if it makes a difference in your family and the way that you in the way that you meal plan for your family.
So helpful. So tell us what dinner looked like at your house last night. What'd you have? What time did it happen? Who was there? Who liked what you had?
Yes, so usually I do Taco Tuesday, but my grocery pickup did not have a few ingredients for tacos on Tuesday. And I was like, I'm not gonna sweat it. And that's the other thing. It's like, everything's okay. Let's just like figure out something else. So instead of Taco Tuesday, we had Taco Wednesday. And so I took my girls to Taekwondo. And then I get home and I have about 25 minutes to get dinner ready so that when they come home starving, dinner is ready to be put on the table. So I just browned the ground turkey, kind of like got everything ready on the counter. But really, that was the biggest thing, is just browning the meat and yeah, seasoning it for tacos and stuff. So, and then we had all the toppings, and my husband got home relatively early, which is not the norm. So he was able to be there too. So
Oh, that's nice. A whole
yeah,
family meal.
yes.
And our tacos family, they must be a family approved meal.
Oh my gosh, totally family approved. My husband loves Tex-Mex, and my kids do too, you know? And I love it because if you just think about a taco, but you can think of all these different ways you can make a taco. So the possibilities are endless, so that's fun.
Okay, are you a hard shell or soft shell girl?
We are soft shell people, but I love a good hard shell too.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Um, Anything else that you want to share about your views on people eating and getting food onto the table?
Well, we've talked so much about how food is really powerful. It's this powerful thing. And obviously, we all need to eat. Everybody's got to eat. That's the name of my podcast. But I also want people to realize it's just food. We put so much emphasis on it. Like, what am I going to make for dinner? Oh, I don't want to cook. And it's like, okay, that's okay. Let's figure something else out. There are so many options out there that are healthy. I think we have gotten so much better about the options that are available for quick meals. And also, if you are having cereal for dinner, that it's okay. I think we have to know that food is powerful and it completely affects our mood and our energy and our bodies. But we also have to know that it can't run us, right? We are in charge of what we put in our bodies. Food doesn't have the power.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So just grace for ourselves in this journey, and everyone's going to get fed and everything's going to be okay.
Love it. Something that I've been asking every guest is about their morning routine. So I'm curious what your mornings look like.
Yeah, so typically my mornings look like my toddler getting up at 5:30, 5:45, 6. There are a few occasions where I can get up before he's awake. But either way, he knows the drill, he knows the morning routine. So we go downstairs, I get him some water or some milk, and I get my coffee, and I will just write out my day, write out how my day is going to look. On Sundays, I plan the whole week, like just kind of like a rundown of what I have each day. And then in the mornings, I love to just physically write my to-do list. So everything that I plan on doing or want to get done, um, you know, I even write down laundry. Like it's a very specific list. And then it just makes me feel like, okay, I know what's going to happen. I know my goals for the day. And then it seems easier, more manageable.
Awesome. All right. And then you just dive into it.
Yep. And then my other kids get up and then the day starts and it's,
Full tilt.
pretty chaotic to get them on the bus on time. I don't know why every morning it's just like, you know, just happens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you for sharing that.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming here and sharing your tips and tricks for maybe making mealtime less stressful, less overwhelming.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here.